Theresa May or Theresa Maybe? Is the UK Prime Minister really as indecisive about Brexit as some of her critics maintain? Our politics commentator Janan Ganesh thinks not. Janan, I mean, you're going against quite a lot of received wisdom at the moment in London, which is that the Prime Minister doesn't really know what the plan is around Brexit. You think otherwise. Why?
I think it's been fairly obvious since at least October, when she gave a speech to the Conservative Party conference, but even really in previous interviews and even really in her previous job as Home Secretary, that her ultimate priority is to restore national control over immigration. And along with that, she would like to escape from the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. Those two things very strongly imply, in fact, they absolutely require, that Britain leaves the European single market. It even puts a question mark over Britain being in the European Customs Union. She said all this multiple times, and I think the reluctance to interpret it in the obvious way is it's an emotional coping mechanism for a lot of people, and I'm one of them, who don't particularly want this country to leave the European Union, don't like the idea of leaving the single market, and that's a perfectly legitimate fear to have. What I don't think is legitimate or useful is to pretend that she's not saying it in the first place.
Where does that come from? I mean, you mentioned the Home Office, but you seem to be saying that the two things that Theresa May really cares about in this world are controlling immigration and which ultimate sort of legal authority one is responsible to. I mean, where does that come? They seem very sort of refined positions. Yeah. Where does that come from?
Well, I don't think they were invented by her in her head on June the 24th last year when the referendum result came through. I do think they've been building up for years, partly because she was Home Secretary for 6 years. The Home Office is a department which is all about choosing social order rather than necessarily economic freedom. And so on an issue like immigration should have very conservative views absorbed just by being in that institution for so long. But even going back earlier than that to her upbringing, she comes from the home counties, is a conservative, not phenomenally right-wing at all, but has a view of this country as somewhere that ideally would be a bit slower, a bit more familiar, a bit more settled than it has been over the past 10, 15 years or so, with large numbers of foreigners and a lot of market freedom disrupting society. So she's got preferences for a certain type of Britain and now sees Brexit as an opportunity of realising it.
And in order to achieve that or realise that, you think she's prepared to sacrifice some economic growth? Do you think that she's conscious in making that choice?
Yeah, I think this is, for almost all my time in politics, we've had prime ministers in this country whose ultimate priority was growth and competitiveness. That was true of Margaret Thatcher, but also true of Labour prime ministers like Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. For the first time in my life, certainly, I think we have a prime minister who, if a deal emerged from the European Union, which left us maybe a bit worse off in terms of competitiveness, but restored control on immigration, she would sign it in a way that I can't imagine any of the previous 5 or 6 prime ministers signing it. It's a big temperamental, intellectual change that we've had in Theresa May. And again, I think a lot of us just refuse to believe it because we don't particularly want to.
Right. And do you think maybe that the markets, particularly the foreign exchange markets, are accepting it? But sterling has taken another tumble this week.
No, I still don't think they're quite wise to this yet, in that they recover periodically when they seem to be reading clues pointing to a softer Brexit. So there was a big fall earlier in the summer going into the autumn in sterling. Then since October, it really picked up a fair bit. And then as soon as she gave an interview, Theresa May gave an interview very recently, again reiterating the case for, although she won't call it this, a hard exit, sterling fell again. And I wonder what are they responding to? It's been fairly obvious for a while, I think, what her position is. It's been fairly obvious that position is one that the markets don't like. I don't know why they retain hope, as they seem to, of her changing her mind or not really meaning what she says. So these fluctuations, I think, are signs of the market not being particularly rational or not listening.
Right. Well, that was obviously a wide subject, one we probably have to come back to in another one because we've run out of time. Janan Ganesh, thank you very much.
Thank you.